let us begin. I am here with my friend Donovan.
Hello.
And we are going to talk about some things, Donovan. Some things and stuff.
Some things and stuff.
How was your week?
My week was good.
Close that door.
Yeah. Is this close enough?
Sorry, we're technical difficulties.
It's in there good,
What
man. My week was good.
Speak.
I enjoyed the first snow for a few hours and then kind of been hiding from the wet. I don't like the wet so much, but it's been a good week. I've just been spending time writing, reading, studying. Yeah. What about you?
Oh man, it's been busy.
Top.
It's been good.
What occupies your time?
The snow. When it snows. I love the snow.
Do you do snow sports?
Nope. I wish. I mean, what is a snow sport? Hockey?
I mean like hockey, snowboarding, skiing.
I bobsled.
Sledding. Oh, really?
Yeah,
No way.
in my backyard.
You're joking, right?
I don't know. Is it?
I think
bobsledding is like the most ambitious sport to get into, man.
yeah, that one looks scary. And you have to have like 2 or 3 people in one of those sleds, right?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? I can barely hear me.
I can hear you.
Nice.
Just put it so there's a little circle in the mic, and you want it
yeah.
facing you.
Hello.
Yeah, that's way better.
Yeah, it's way better.
We got there. Yeah, dude. It's been a good week. What did I do? Wasn't it? When was Thanksgiving? Was that last week?
Thanksgiving was like 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Week and a half, 2 weeks ago. What'd you do for Thanksgiving? See family? Stay in town?
Yeah, I went home, saw family. Dude, my favorite part about Thanksgiving, like for our dinner, we always have a duck.
Oh, really? Nice. Like
Dude.
a turducken or just like separate? Or are they like...
It's just like you want turkey or you want duck.
I see.
And I think it's so good, man. Duck is like, it's one of my favorite meats.
Nice.
I only have it at Thanksgiving, but it's the best part every time.
Nice. Whoops. I think I've only had duck once, and I don't really remember what it tastes like. What's the strangest animal you've ever eaten?
Strangest animal I've eaten is probably alligator.
Haha.
But it's super common in Florida, so like they have it at every restaurant down there.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask if you're in the South.
So,
I've never had alligator. The strangest food I've ever had was dog.
Strangest dog you've ever had was
Food. No, I've never had dog.
What kind of dog?
I've never ate dog. I heard China, they're like about to ban dog meat.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, it took long enough. Yeah, have you heard of those turduckens? It's like a turkey with a duck inside and a chicken inside the duck, and they cook it all together. It looks kind of weird, honestly. I think it's just excess for the point of excess, but people like it.
Bro, that sounds fire.
Yeah.
With like stuffing in it? Cheese between?
I assume so, yeah. Like a little bird cake.
Yeah. I'll try that.
Yeah.
I don't like turkey though.
I don't like turkey either. I had turkey with some friends, and everything they made was amazing, but we got a Walmart turkey. It was a little dry, but it seems you gotta eat turkey for the sake of eating turkey. Yeah. I don't see my family for Thanksgiving anymore. It's not that fun. Better to eat with friends.
Yeah. I mean, it's more about the food though, for real.
Yeah. I think it's just for company, you know? I mean, if it's just for the food, you could eat alone, you know, and it's not that fun. But it's really nice to be around people. Yeah. Do you guys do the what are you thankful for thing?
Yeah. No, not really, actually.
Eli, what are you thankful for this year?
I am thankful for all of the opportunities that I have received this year, and that I've been lucky enough to take advantage of. And I'm thankful for the good weather that we've had so far. I just hope we get more snow.
Nice.
Can you believe it's already this hot?
Hot?
It was like, it snowed for the weekend. snowed for 2 days.
Yeah, and then it melted.
Covered everything. And I woke up today. The grass is greener than ever, bro.
I kind of like it. I just don't like the wet. I'd rather have the snow. I like how snow makes me feel like a kid again, especially when the sky is a big white blanket. You know, it feels like almost like you're in a dome, a covering. It doesn't seem so expansive. One time I was hanging out with a friend, and he told me he was scared to look up into the sky, which I had never heard someone say that before, and I thought was pretty funny, and I was making fun of him for it. And then he pointed up, and he's like, "That goes on for forever." And I was like, "Oh my God, I never thought about that."
Do we know that?
Well, I mean, there's an edge. You know something that I think is weird? You know how, like, there's like an edge to the universe that as it expands out, it's kind of like a giant sphere that just keeps getting bigger.
That's right. I thought it goes on forever. How do they know there's an edge?
That's what I'm saying. Well, I mean, they figure it out by like looking at I don't know, light and what is it called? Like, I don't know, light, radioactive stuff.
I know they. Yeah.
There's a limit.
It's like somehow the ultraviolet waves travel very far. So I know that.
The word escapes me. But I don't know. I like, there's this picture where it's like, it shows like, it's almost like, you know how there's an event horizon? I think the edge of the universe is called a Rindler horizon. And it's pretty much like an event horizon where nothing can pass it. But what's confusing to me that I've been thinking about a lot lately that I can't really wrap my head around it is, because they say it's like an expanding sphere with an edge, but I don't get what it's expanding into. I mean, I'm not a physics major and I don't know that much about physics, but
We gotta Columbus this, bro.
Yeah.
There's no edge.
Do you feel fascination or fear, or do you even think about like where we are as people in the universe, or the fact that we are like a cognitive, I don't know, brain being? I think it's real easy to just go through life like stuck in your human like mindset and kind of just be like, yeah, I'm a human, this is this, and but I don't know, it seems strange. Sometimes it terrifies me and I feel insignificant, and then sometimes, I don't know, it feels freeing and just like weird, like a weird mystery.
What do you think the in-between is?
Wait, the in-between of what?
Those two things. Because it really is those. It's either, on one hand, it is scary to... I would say it's unknown, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's kind of terrifying about it.
Yeah.
Do you think that's... What is the in-between between being completely terrified about how big everything is and being just like not having to care about things because it's so big?
Yeah.
Like nihilism.
Yeah. And I was a nihilist for years. I just recently got over it, which is nice. I wouldn't recommend it. I think I don't know, this isn't quite in between, but I think like joy and wonder is another aspect of that. Like, oh my God, like what is going on? This is so strange, and just kind of being astounded. Like, I think if you can get to a point where you realize you're essentially an alien and get out of your human mindset, it's just really weird what is going on if you stop taking it for granted or look at it a little non-conceptually. But I don't know. I don't think most people really fixate on it, but I think, I don't know, I think like a steady contentment and knowing that you don't know. But I think wonder is a good way to sit in between, so you don't stick to like, or get stuck in like a nihilist edge, or I don't know, angst. I think a lot of people have angst.
Angst, like just anxiety.
Kind of. Angst is kind of like, yeah, angst is existential dread, and I think it's like a little different than apathy, where you're just like, well, whatever, I don't care. Let it do whatever it's gonna do. Do you believe in God?
Yes.
In what sense? Like in because I mean, God has a really, I think, especially in liberal places, like a really negative connotation. A lot of people aren't really stoked with Christianity. I'm not really. I used to be Christian for like 18 years. And do you believe, okay, I guess what I'm asking, do you believe in intelligent designer, or just kind of like the universe as a cohesive, unitary whole that seems differentiated because our brains interpret it that way?
I think it's both.
Both. So you think someone made it and then is the whole.
Mhm. I think that intelligent design kind of begets itself.
Mm-hmm. Like the fine-tuning argument.
You said at the beginning of that you can see yourself as an alien.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I don't always see myself like that, but
like, how would you be able to see that?
I think like through like meditating or like various, I don't know, chemical changes in your brain. I think if you, something I realized recently about meditation, for which it is for most people and what it's been for me for most of my life, is like getting to a point of stillness and peace and maybe even bliss, or just analyzing your thought processes in kind of like a psychological way. But if you keep going deeper and deeper and you move past levels of bliss, and where you get to a point where you're not thinking at all, not just not thinking, but you kind of disassociate from your thoughts, feelings, and body in a way. And then you have sensory information like light, sound, data, even your thoughts, which is just more sensory information, just hitting yourself nakedly. And I think that for me sometimes causes fear, and because it's really strange. It's like being a baby again. I think like a bunch of like mystics and saints and all sorts of people, they always talk about like being a fool or being like a child to be able to see correctly. But I think if you do that, because we spend years of our life, like the first, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, like you're kind of like a naked open nervous system. You have like trillions of neurons or what are soaking everything up, and you get programmed or imprinted with not just like language, but like social concepts, family concepts, and you kind of just get like, you pretty much download the human experience based upon the human experience of those around you, and that's why there's like so many differing views. And I think if you can get to like pretty much like a childhood aggressive baby state where you're just an organism getting not blank, but just data, it seems very strange, and you disassociate from your humanness, and you're like, oh, what the heck, I am just this organism in this space, and I have no idea why, and no one else has any idea why. And I think that's what I mean by alien. If you can, yeah, dissociate from your humanness, and it's either totally terror-filling or wonder-filling.
It seems real.
Yeah, seems real.
What do you think the self is?
I actually I don't think there's a self. There's obviously like a sense of self. I was Buddhist for a number of years. I guess I kind of still am, but
So you went from Catholic to Buddhist?
I was actually Southern Baptist.
That's a ride.
Yeah, it was a ride, and I was like adamant about it. Like I loved it. And I was pretty brainwashed, and
Were you? Do you think that they like really brainwash people, or do you think it's just tradition?
I mean, those are kind of the same thing to a degree, just like I guess brainwashing is kind of, it can be a bad word. Because I guess like brainwashing is actually when you break down like someone's psyche and then you build them back up. Have you ever heard of metanoia? It's a Greek word, and that means that it's where you break down a person's psyche, and then they're a blank slate, and you say, now we can build up this human with our own programs, and it's like kind of like a behaviorism thing. But the self, I think, is just like, I don't know, I go back and forth. It's one of the things I'm always thinking about, but I personally think it's just like psychological and biological aggregates. Like we have all these different sets and parts of our brain working on things at the same time, and we have like an illusory experience of a continuous experience. And so we have this sense of a self, and there's actually there's two of them in the brain. I can't remember which one is which, but there's one part of the brain somewhere on the left or right side. It's called the autobiographical narrator, and it's what like orders the information in your brain, and it says, okay, there is a you that is feeling this, and there was a before, and there is a next that we're going to be running on. And I thought it was really crazy because I've been studying, like, I don't know, Buddhism and self and stuff like that for years. And one of the things for meditation, like Hinduism, Buddhism, even like Judaism, is that like one of the goals is to get to a point where you turn yourself off. And the idea is that if you turn yourself off, you can see clearly. And I mean, whatever tradition it is, it's like, oh, and then you experience God, or you experience, just like Buddhists say, pure mind, or like Jews say, then you can like ascend up the ladder and experience the Godhead as much as you can. And Hindus also say that. And but I knew that people can have like ego dissolution or ego deaths from like psychedelics and stuff like that, but I wasn't sure if that you could actually do it from meditating. And so and I don't like believing things, like after being Christian so long, because I think you have to sometimes trick yourself with any belief. And I felt like I had deceived myself so long that now I'm very skeptical about everything, and I try to like experience things from direct experience specifically. And so I was like, well, and I have turned myself off twice from meditating, but before this I never had, and I didn't know if it was really possible. And I have a hard time believing anything anyone tells me. I think it's good to go from direct experience. But there was a study that came out in 2016, I think, and they got people under an MRI, like a huge group of people, and half the study was people that had, in the paper they call it, I think it's funny, it's called DIED, like DIED. It means drug-induced ego dissolution. And so they showed what parts of the brain turn on and off, what are inhibited or activated with like molecules. And so that was cool, and that made sense. And a lot of it was like the autobiographical narrator. Some of it's like your default mode network gets turned on or off. But then they actually like showed a ton of people that turned themselves off with just meditation. And they did different types of meditation, like one's like open monitoring, which is kind of like mindfulness. It's when you kind of just do what I was talking about earlier, where you try to not attach or identify with your thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, and just accept data as it is and just kind of be still. There's like mantra, which is basically you just repeat something over and over and over and over until that's the only thing going on. Another one is like meta, or like focusing on love or a specific emotion until that becomes the overriding emotion. And people are able to turn themselves off with every single one of those, which I think is crazy, under an MRI. And so that gave me a lot more, inspiration and drive to seek it out for myself. And they're all different parts of the brain. None of them do it quite the same way. So I think that's super interesting. And like still like neuroscience and psychology, I mean, I guess there's various ideas, but no one quite knows what the self is. But finding out that there is an autobiographical narrator in our brain that orders our experience and makes it feel like a story, I think that's the closest thing to what our self is. Like our brain's a huge, vast network that's putting all these pieces together. But I basically think the self's the narrator. Like it's the thing that's going, okay, you are having this happen. You're going to have this happen next. And like, I think everyone kind of mythologizes their life or what's going on, and we always kind of have like a little storyteller in our brain, whether it's conscious or not. You know what I mean? So I kind of think that's what the self is.
So I asked, okay, well, before that, how do they figure out that they've turned off the self? How do you quantify that?
In the study, or like experientially?
Both, I guess.
I don't quite remember. I just read that paper again. Like with the MRI.
Where did they do the study?
So when or where?
Where?
I don't remember. The woman who led the study is this woman named like I cannot remember. Something like Carter Harris is her last name. And there was like 20 other people in the study. But they got groups of people that were either
like 20 people that led it?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's like 20 people that were like all leading it, like working on it, doing all the various things for it. But I mean,
that's extensive.
Yeah. And I guess a lot of studies are more than one person, It's like a group. It's like here, like you have like a graduate student working on things, and you have other people slaving away at the details, helping put it together. But they just did like what you do for an MRI. You have someone drink something that has like dye in it so you can see what's going on in the brain. And so that they see what happens in the brain and like what is shutting off. And like in the paper, they actually extensively say like what's being inhibited, what's being activated. And I assume that some of it is from like them saying like, oh, I just died for a second. but I'm not exactly sure.
What does it feel like?
To turn yourself off?
Mhm.
I've had myself turn off in different ways, and they're all very different. Have you ever had your sense of self go away?
I don't think I have.
Sometimes for me personally, it's sometimes it is like just completely shutting off, like a turn off. Like in Buddhism and Hinduism, they call it a cessation or a fruition. Cessation just means like you shut it off, and like it'll be like, I don't know, kind of like being rolled or like stretched out, and then it'll be like a second or two where you're just totally turned off, and then there's a sense of rebooting where like your systems slowly come back on, and then sometimes it's a lot different. I had an experience once that it lasted much longer than was comfortable for me, but there was a sensation. It was like being in a large black space, and like there was like a round sphere at the bottom, and like I was just like a disembodied observer, and there was like this boy like laying on a couch, and yeah, I just like had sat and stared at this boy, and these things happening and being like, it felt like I was making those things happen. But then you come back into the sphere and you're like, oh, I'm that boy, strange things like that. And then I don't know, sometimes you're like being rolled out.
Like rolling dough.
Like if you could imagine like you're looking at me, right? You're hearing, seeing things, and you have like this kind of like awareness. But like imagine if you took the room and your body and your viewpoint, and like that was like an object, and then like, so imagine it was like, yeah, like a thing of dough, and then imagine some god is like rolling the dough flat, and it's like being flattened out or something like that.
How long have you been meditating?
I think I started meditating when I was 19, so a long time. So like 9 years. Now everyone knows how old I am. But yeah, it's for 9 years. No, like steadily, Sometimes I go through heavy periods of doing it, and then sometimes like I didn't meditate for probably like a good year and a half when I had a girlfriend. It was too distracting. Like having someone in the room, you like want to, and that's just me. I think I have a very bad like attentional thing and get distracted easily. So I stopped for like probably about a year and a half, and I take breaks every once in a while. But I don't know. When you have a lot on your mind, it's hard to sit and not hyperfixate on those things.
How do you feel like your breathing has affected your meditation?
Honestly, this is something I don't hear very many people talk about. And maybe it's just me an anxious thing, but I almost regretted meditating because I have gained such a hyper awareness of my breath that it's hard to turn off often, and I go into panic sometimes because I'll be like, oh, I'm not breathing right, or my lungs feel different than usual, and I think it's just anxiety mixed with hyper awareness. But yeah, I have to try not to think about it often, actually.
You think you have hyper awareness?
Not like in like a total sense, but like in like, I don't know, like when like a hit of adrenaline hits you and like small details you fixate upon.
Yeah.
Or like, have you ever had a panic attack or anything?
Yeah.
So kind of like that. So kind of like that. So I mean, like microscopically honing in and only focusing on one thing.
When I panic, I never focus.
Really?
Yeah, I get like the opposite happens. I can only focus if I'm not stressed.
Yeah. I usually just focus on medical things.
I wish I was a person that focused when I was stressed, because it seems helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't focus well either.
There's people though that like do. There's people that like when they get pressured, when they get like super stressed out,
they work better.
It's pedal to the metal, man. Like
I do wish I was like
they
that.
block out everything.
Yeah. They like use it to their advantage. I think like soldiers have to be like that.
Did you see? Yeah, and then it's something that's trained. I think it's something that can be trained. Did you see the new Wes Anderson film, or I guess even read the book, the Roald Dahl book, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar.
No, I haven't seen that yet. I've been seeing it on Netflix.
It was interesting. The character like ends up sitting and like focusing on an object for 3 minutes every day. So it's the only thing he can think about.
Throughout the day, or just right then and there?
Just every day. He just like sits down and he gets a candle and he just focuses on it until the only thing in his mind is the candle. Mm-hmm. It's like that type of meditation you're talking about, where your mind just becomes the thing you're looking at.
Exactly. Yeah, I've done that too. I one time used a candle to meditate for like a year, pretty obsessively, and I began taking it everywhere with me. I went, and I had these...
You did it with a candle?
Yeah, I did.
You should watch this movie.
Yeah, I will watch it. I'll watch it tonight now. And these people were joking that the candle was my girlfriend, because I'd be like, I'm going upstairs to be alone with my candle. And they're like, what are you going to do with that candle?
So what do you think you got out of that?
Out of that, I think like the ability to focus a little better. And I don't know, I think like when you're using an object to focus on over a long period of time, you not really develop a relationship with it. I mean, you always anthropomorphize a little bit, but it becomes easier and easier to like lock into that. Like anything, you know, with practice comes being able to do it easier.
That's fair.
Hmm.
What, going off subject, what is natural to you?
Natural? Being terrified is natural. Aside from that, I haven't really thought about what seems natural.
Like, do you think being terrified is kind of a natural reaction as a worldly idea?
I think so. I think I'm just an anxious person as well. But nothing honestly seems natural.
Nothing does?
No. I think sometimes meditation has almost been almost negative to a degree in some ways. Just breaking things down, hyperfixating, reductionism can ruin everything after a while. But
so you said it made you hyper focused on your breathing, and you also talked about being overwhelmed by, you said you reboot and you get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for meditation. And I've been trying to meditate. I've never gotten that far with it. But it's interesting that you say that, because it's like it's the recommendation that the school gives for
it's good to do
dealing with things. You just think that you can do too much, is what you're saying?
No, physiologically, it's really good for you. There's a lot of positive physical benefits. And I guess I do have ways of things feeling natural. Well, one of the things that I think a lot of people are kind of aware of it now is that there's a huge hurdle you have to jump past when you begin meditating, where it feels like you're actually getting worse. You know, your thoughts get very loud. Your thoughts seem to be racing more. Your emotions seem to be more heavy and present. Your body seems to be more painful. And it's not that it's gotten worse. It's that it's always like that. You're just kind of distracted in the ether of your experience, so that you're paying more attention to it. And I think it's like the red pill and the blue pill kind of thing.
Explain that.
The red pill and the blue pill?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, initially it comes like a movie, The Matrix, and they're like, take this red pill and you'll get to see the truth of your reality. Take the blue pill, you'll keep on going living in ignorance. And I think heavy meditating or any other kind of experience changing things, they don't always give you a clear view of reality. But if you chase after it obsessively and make that the focal point of your life, you start to red pill yourself. And often I just wish I had never started. You know, it's a lot nicer to live in ignorance, and sometimes because I don't know. And there's always a constant self-judgment of, am I really seeing things more clearly, or am I just fooling myself? But for being natural, one of the things that have come with meditation and experience like that is that I got rid of my TV. I still watch YouTube a lot. I still get addicted to YouTube heavily. But I just I just found it strange that the TV is the center of everyone's house. And I actually noticed this when I was a Christian, when I was a kid. And I don't agree with what this pastor said, but he's like, in America, the altar used to be the center of the house, and now it's the television. The television is the altar. And I thought that was funny, but you do notice it. Like, I think most people, if you go hang out their house, and I used to be the same way, you just put something on for background noise, even if you're like working or just talking to somebody, and for like the hyper fixating or like focusing, I think I began to become aware that I was spending a lot of time as a talking monkey, staring at a piece of glass with flashing lights and sound waves hitting my ears, and that seemed very strange. So that felt unnatural. I still use my phone obsessively. I try not to because that also feels unnatural. I ended up selling my PlayStation because I was playing it so much, and I mean it's really fun. I love playing games, but I just felt like I was spending too much time on it. I don't necessarily think those things are unnatural, I just think it becomes so ingrained that you don't sit with your own experience as much. So I guess in a way, but then like you're left with doing things that are quote unquote natural. And like I sold my PlayStation and got rid of my TV because I wanted to spend more time thinking and being with myself and like working on writing or art or producing things. And the first year I just spent a lot more time sitting around thinking about how depressed I was. So that sucked. And I finally have got over that hump the last like 6-9 months where like people talk about dopamine fast, which I kind of get the idea, but I get why other people say that's ridiculous because you use dopamine to live, like the reward system is there so that you can be like, hey, you should eat. Hey, you should propagate the species. Hey, you should seek shelter.
I think they're misnaming it. There's something that you're fasting from.
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't think you get a dopamine spike. I mean, I know they recognize that you do, but I don't think that's why it's so addictive. Mm-hmm. And when you get away from all the technology, something definitely.
Yeah.
You recover from something. You
do recover. I think it's like a oversaturation of unnecessary dopamine, maybe from like false sources. And I think once you're bored long enough, which is the idea, but you end up either sitting around being depressed and anxious, or you find things to do. And part of that, something that I really like boredom is terrible. I think everyone agrees. And in Buddhism, they say boredom is the low-level understanding of the natural state of reality that we all find ourselves in. And the word for it in Buddhism is shunyata, but it just means emptiness. And I was confused by the idea of emptiness, thinking it was like void, like completely like non-entity. But emptiness just pretty much means relativity, that there are no stable entities on their own. Everything in reality, you, me, all objects they're interdependent upon something else to arise. Nothing arises on its own. Matter can't be created or destroyed. Nothing can exist without everything else. And we don't really notice because we're doing things, And if you sit around long enough with bored, and whenever we feel bored, it feels terrible. Like at first, it just is like I would rather be doing something else. And I'm sure part of that is just like our animal nature. But the longer you sit with boredom, the worse and worse it feels. And I think that's like another hurdle. That's one of the things about meditating too, is that there's this awful feeling that comes upon us. Then all you want I quit meditating for a while because you have to sit there completely bored, completely just resting in yourself and emptiness, and that's not always that fun. And I started dreading it, and I was like, I'm giving this up for a while. I'm tired of feeling that feeling, and kind of just ran and escaped from it. But I don't know, if you sit long enough for parts of your organism or personality or whatever to shut off, and you can get past that awful hurdle. I think in like mysticism, they call I used to like a lot of like I still like Western philosophy, but like Western occultism, Western philosophy, Western mysticism, but they have all these phrases that are like intentionally vague so they could feel like they were part of a cool school of those who know, and maybe it was like poetic license, but they had a word they called the guardians of the threshold, and like they didn't really explain what it is, but it's like this hurdle you have to jump through before you can have any real kind of unitary or like mystical experience. And that's what that is. It's like this overwhelming boredom, dread, and anxiety that comes with sitting with yourself.
It's just something to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, okay. So here's my question. I want to know your thought on this, meditation wise.
Thank you for the water.
No problem, man. So I talked about this in the last episode, but I want to see what you think. You talk about the self being the narrator, the thing that links our experience together and makes it uniform to an extent. But through what means does it do that?
Well, I think it's biological. Like, I used to believe in a soul, and I think most people do. And at the moment, I don't believe in a soul. And I think that's kind of what people equate with self, you know? Like, I think in, like, cultures that, like, in Hinduism, they have, like a, or even, like Jungian psychology, there's, like, a capital S self, which is supposed to be, like, the real total self that, like, could be equated to a soul. And then there's, like, the ego self, you know? Like, this narrator of continuous experience that you and I deal with. Like, there's obviously a sense of self, you know, because I am saying I and you are saying I'm saying you and all that stuff. But wait, what was the question again?
So with language, because you when you think about things, you describe it, right?
Yeah.
You use language to label things. How many languages do you know?
I only know English.
Yeah, I only know
English. I learned Hebrew, and I can't read it, but I like know some words and like know the alphabet. I started learning Devangari, which is like the script for like 20 or 30 different like Indian, East, whatever languages, and a little bit of Japanese, but I don't like speak fluently.
So what parts of our human experience don't involve language?
Almost none. And that's something I think is really cool, and like I have like linguistics is really cool.
When you have a nostalgic thought, how much language is involved with that?
Well, that's the thing that's like strange about like sometimes like memories and impressions and thoughts, because there are, for me, and I think most people, there's thoughts that have words in them, but if you like bring up a memory right now, like it's kind of like a really vague, hazy thing. Like if you say, what color is your memory? What does it feel like? What does it look like? Like, is it a perfectly clear picture like watching a movie? It's kind of like a vague thing. But one of the things about language is that I think like our perception's pretty kind of ruled by grammar, and like comes out of that, because I think, I can't remember, I was talking to someone about this the other day. I can't remember the tribe, and I'm probably going to slaughter this, but like we have like a subject-object dichotomy, you know? Like there's a subject that is doing something to an object. And I think that's like where our, I don't know, our mode of being comes from. And there was some tribe somewhere in like, I think South America, I could be totally wrong, where, because most of the world has grammar the same exact way, even if the language is different. But this tribe, they didn't have like a verb tense. Like it was the same. There was no past or future or present. It was just like do. And they had no subject-object dichotomy. It was like really weird. And like apparently they're like one of the most peaceful cultures that the white man had ever found. And there was no other culture like that. And they were totally sealed away. And I think that people chose to leave them that way, you know, and not try to educate them with like Western thoughts and ideas, because it seems so pure in a way.
What do you think language is?
I think language is kind of like an organic thing. Like language is amazing, you know.
But it's finite. Like the word "the" is the same between us, and when it's written down, it's like a finite object.
Well, that's one of the things about like language and the brain and the mind, is that like we're obviously able to communicate, but communication is as easy as the ocean. And like for simple things.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Just a line from a song, but I like it because communication is extremely difficult sometimes. And like your neural, because like there's a bunch of different like little neural sets in your brain that, like if I say apple, like you have all these things that you were conditioned with from your childhood experience, whatever was imprinted upon you as a nervous system, that you recall the idea of an apple with like subconscious like memory associations or like sense associations that you don't really think about, that are completely different from me. So if I say I ate an apple and it was really good, and which is a statement that you understand, but it's kind of vague. Like you'll understand what I'm saying. You're like, oh yeah, he ate that apple called a fruit. He thought it was good. But like my idea of good and your idea of good is totally different. And when I think of an apple, I think of, I mean, I'm sure we kind of think of similar things, but there's like a vague haziness that we're not exactly on the same exact level. Or like if you try to communicate your feelings, I think it's like, or like good poetry or books, or they are able to like call upon an emotion or a feeling.
Isn't that what it seems like they do, though? Because it's not just that when you say the word apple, we do have different impressions of it, but that word kind of brings out those impressions. Mm-hmm. And for the word to function, it has to bring out similar impressions, if not the same, at least similar.
Exactly. Yeah.
So these words are controlling your impressions of everything that you see, because every time you hear a word, that structures your thought process. Mm-hmm. Right.
I agree. Yeah.
So then what part of your thought process is structured by yourself? If words are structuring your thought process when you think about them, when you read them, when you hear them, mm-hmm. what part of your experience are you just making completely organically, completely by yourself? No language involved.
And that's what I was talking about earlier with like the self and like experience. Almost none of it. Almost everything that we experience is ordered by things that we have been conditioned to be ordered before, and we're used to like giving our experience language. And like some people are better at speaking or writing than others. You know, like we'll all have similar experiences, but that doesn't mean we'll all be able to communicate them. And we do kind of order our things in kind of like a grammatical way, but and so I think like that narrator and like ourself is kind of like a big sentence. I think that's like where the idea of like logos is like a living organism of word. But if you can drop those layers of thinking and conceptualizing, you get to a point where it's just like background mind, and there's no like, oh, this is happening to me, and it's really hard to communicate that experience. So I think that what we're experiencing, there's not much that we can communicate without words, or like a dichotomy of it, me.
Maybe not communicate, but there must be ways you can think without words. There must be ways to like structure your own ideas without using any language involved. And
I think a lot.
I think we see this with nostalgia because most of your, like, if you smell a smell that brings you a nostalgic memory, mm-hmm. your memory of that place doesn't bring a lot of words with it. Like if you smell a smell that reminds you of your grandma's house when you were young, you imagine your grandma's house, you see a bunch of things in your mind. None of it's really linked. Like, it's hard to describe.
Yeah,
it's almost impossible to describe, especially with the older memories. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that they're with the older memories. It's almost like as you're a kid, you slowly absorb more and more language, and it takes over more and more of your mind.
I agree.
So adults have less nostalgia of their later years than they do of their earlier years. Mm-hmm. So whatever that experience is like a flash of what you would experience without any language. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty vivid. It's pretty strong.
Mm-hmm. Very.
So I just wonder, like, I wonder if language is diluting. I wonder if language is like, it seems like it's replacing something else.
A little bit, because like a child it's a freshly unimprinted nervous system. Like when a baby looks at things, it just sees vague shapes and colors and sounds, and it's like just like sensory data hits it, and that's what I kind of like equated to like the alien feeling when you're just receiving things without language involved or attached. But I mean, we obviously need language to learn, but yeah, I think like concept and language is something that we need to communicate with others. But
do we need language to learn?
No. I mean, it depends what you're learning.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it helps.
Yeah. I don't know. I was like 6, 7, 8 years ago, I got fed up with like philosophy and trying to figure things out from what other people said. And I was like, what do I know that I figured out on my own that I have not been told by another person or have read in a book? And like very little, besides like obvious like physical things, with direct experience. Most of what I know I've been passed through in language, and it's I didn't actually really know that much. Most of what I know I've been told, which is everybody. But yeah.
You know how trees have like those, well, like they have the fungus that connect them, and they think the trees like have some kind of communication network through that, but they definitely exchange resources through these fungus. And I wonder how different languages like with us, as if it's some kind of, because it's, I mean, language is language, but what is that? What, as a concept, what does it fit? Is it
It's like an information network or something.
It's real enough. It's finite, right? Mm-hmm. Like a thought, like you can say, like, what is a thought? Well, a thought can be who knows what. A thought is almost like a state. It's like a cloud. Like you can't really finitely describe what a cloud is. You can say what it's made out of.
There's no edge.
And I could say, yes, language is made out of words, and it does change. There's different languages. There's different, and depending on what words are involved, it's different. But you can still say the English language. Okay, what is that? If it's finite, if there's a set amount of words within it that exist written in stone and as we speak in our minds under the same, all the way through those processes, keeping the same form, it's got to be something somewhat definite. And I wonder if it's like almost like this symbiotic relationship that we have with this. I don't even know what.
Yeah, I think somewhat. Like, I was listening to Noam Chomsky, and he was kind of talking about like how like when we talk about learning language, we talk about different dialects, and you're like, oh, this is a different dialect than this. But when everybody learns, they're like, we're all speaking a similar language that, let's say, we'll call English, but the English you learned is a different language technically than what I learned, because what it is and what it means as like I guess a symbiotic thing or like a organic process from where you are is different than where I am. Not that much. Probably it seems like, because we're able to communicate pretty easily, but minor similarities, minor differences. I mean, to some places it's very large, and I don't know. I'm not sure. It seems like to kind of grow out of the geographic place. Where it is.
And it's interesting that they live and die. Like a language can die. Mm-hmm. If people stop speaking it, then it just, like, it requires us to survive. If we are not speaking it, if we are not using it.
Mm-hmm. And it also changes. Yeah, like one of the...
it evolves, it changes.
Yeah. One of the things about, like, if you can get yourself to a non-conceptual state where you don't understand what any word means, you just see all these weird pasty skin bags making mouth sounds to each other. And that was another thing that I that feels not unnatural, but it feels strange if you can get out your humanness. You're like, wow, we're just making sounds like undulating with our throat and like all these meat parts, and somehow like we understand what these mouth sounds are to each other, and that seems strange. But I don't know, I'm glad there's language.
It built all of this.
Yeah.
Language built all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how I feel if it, like, what it is in itself and what it has to do with this. Do you, like, how Latin is supposedly a dead language?
Yeah, I guess.
Supposedly, yeah. There's a bit.
I don't know if I believe that. Yeah.
I don't believe it. There's a push to. I tried learning a little bit of Latin. I like always get interested in something and then I kind of stall out. But I'm learning a little bit. But there's been a push to make Latin like the main language of the EU, the European Union.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it came out of France. But I have a friend who's a linguist. He went to school here, and he's a real cool guy. He knows a lot more about it than I do, and he speaks Latin, and yeah. He's the one who told me about that. And I didn't believe it at first, but then I looked it up, and yeah, people are pushing, and I think people have been pushing for quite a few years, and I think it was up until 3 or 4 years ago, everyone was kind of like, yeah, whatever. But now it's starting to, I don't know if it's actually a possibility, but a lot of people are wanting to do that, which I think is cool, interesting.
So they're all going to speak it?
I'm not sure. You'd hope so. Like how
It's just the official language.
Yeah, like the official language. Like I can't remember the name of that language. There's like a fake language that was created. It's like a mix of Spanish and English that was supposed to be like a world language. Yeah, there's a word for it. I talked to my linguist buddy, and he like hated the idea, and he was like, "That's so gross and false and fake," and he's like, "It's really plastic," and because he was like, "There's a lot of culture and history for every language, because it is like a really social geographic thing, and like it grows out of whatever peoples or places there are, and that's one of the cool things about language."
What did you think of Hebrew?
Hebrew is very cool. It's really cool.
Every language seems like it has a difference. What is Hebrew's quirk?
Hebrew is one of their quirks is that it's like alphanumeric. Is that they don't have numbers. So like I think it goes up to like 400, and so they use those also as numbers, and they have like an added depth or meaning. One weird thing is there's a few vowels, but they don't necessarily have vowels in that language. So like you'll have a word with consonants, and they have like all these like little diphthongs and like little dots and lines around the words that tell you what the vowel or enunciation is. So that's a strange thing, because I know the consonants. I do not know the vowel stuff, and which makes it difficult, because you either have to like fully have like know Hebrew to kind of just unconsciously know what that is, or you have to be able to figure out those dots, diphthongs, etc. So that's a cool thing, and it's a beautiful language. Like I think every language, including English, it's made out of a few basic lines, and then they kind of just iterate those to get all the letters. But Hebrew, it's cool. It starts from this thing called a yod, and it looks like a little Taurus. It's like this like little apostrophe thing, and most of it is that either stacked on top of each other or next to each other, like doubled with lines in it. And I think it's a beautiful language. It's really fun to write.
Has it been hard to learn?
Not really. I mean, yeah, it's difficult just to get the script down. I can't speak it or anything. Like I have some friends that are Jewish, and they said they did bar mitzvahs, and that seems difficult, because you gotta like know it, and you have to remember a long passage and sing it in front of a bunch of people, and then you're a man. Whoa. But it took me a little bit. I started learning Japanese recently, and that script's real different too. It's not as easy to write. Yeah.
I've heard.
Yeah. But it's pretty easy to speak. It's actually an easier language. I think it's easier than Hebrew.
Do you think how do you think they compare to English? Because I've heard English is harder.
Well, I wouldn't know exactly, because it's my native language. And so I kind of thoughtlessly just know English. Japanese grammar is pretty similar to, it seems similar to English, just kind of like subject verb. There's things are kind of placed differently, kind of like in Spanish. I just started learning English grammar again, because I've been writing, and I realized my grammar was kind of not as good as it could be. And it's not as hard as I thought it was. I was homeschooled for 2 years, for 5th and 6th grade, and my mom had like a depressive episode, and she was like, "Okay, I'm going to sit in this room and cry all day for 2 years." And so me and my siblings were just like left to our own devices. And
dude, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And so I was like, well, we'll just cheat. Like we just had the answer books. So I think I think the experience did not help me. I think I'm a little dumber than I could be, because I think for like a good year and a half, we just copied the answers out. And so my grammar is not as good as it could be. But did you ever do those like grammar diagrams, like with the squares and the lines? For like subject, predicate, clauses, verbs, all that.
Probably. I'd probably have looked it up.
It's pretty fun, yeah. Kind of difficult. What do you think about algebra? Math is separate than language,
I don't think it is. They say it's a language. I think, and I think math, money, and language come from the same function. Whatever they operate on is the same function within us. Like the way that we use all three of them, the way that we conceptualize all three of them, is similar.
Well, I agree with that, but I mean, like all cultures use the same math, but you don't need to be able to speak that language to use it. You know what I mean? It's kind of its own thing.
It's its own language.
Yeah. And I don't know, it seems to be, it's either ingrained into the fabric of the universe or, which seems most likely to me, or just the way our bodies are made is that's the way our nervous systems pick it up and order information in that way.
I think math is like a heavy version of language. I think language plays more on that.
Euclid said math is the language of God.
Yeah. And it is in a way. I would say language stems from mathematics. Language is like a light mathematics that we use to describe more moldable things. More like it's more versatile. It lets you describe the world in a more versatile, a more ambiguous way. So it kind of survives better in that way. Mathematics is way more concrete. Mathematics is like rocks. Language is like clay. And you see the uses differentiate in that way. Obviously, you use the rocks to build the base of the building, but the clay makes the walls, the clay makes all like the siding and everything. Everything that you see for the most part. It's malleable.
Yeah.
And then even money, money talks.
I think money's weird.
Money is weird, but it's every society accepts it. Every society understands the way it works, and it has the same like infectious kind of like it's like parasitic, like it spreads.
I agree, it's parasitic.
And all three of them are all like language like spreads. Language gets, you learn it and then you start to see the world the way that it's built, the way that it's structured, and then it starts. You can't. If the basis of a language is to build a house. If a language, like, you get it in your head and it says, in order to survive, you must build a house, you must, like, do this and this, then that's what you're going to do. Because that's the only thing you're thinking about, since you're just thinking in this language. Obviously, it's way more complex than that. Mm-hmm. But that's, like, a simplified conception of it. I think they all come from the same strain, the same basis. They all have the same function. And I don't think I think they let us sense things that we wouldn't be able to sense without them. But they don't show us the real world. I don't even think mathematics does. Like I said, I think mathematics is a lot more accurate about things. I think
math does.
It's more hard. It's like rock to clay. Mm-hmm. But rocks aren't, there's things underneath rocks. You mine, eventually they'll hit them, but there still goes on. Mm-hmm. It's like the question, it's the same question as, is there an end to the universe? Is there really an edge?
Yeah.
If there is, then maybe mathematics describe everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it might, but you never know. It might just be a way of looking at it.
There's the 12 math problems that haven't been solved. I think 2 of them have been solved now, but there's the 12 that haven't been solved. Mm-hmm. And probably more, but there's 12 big ones that have not been, they can't figure them out yet. Just there's always loose ends. There's always little parts that kind of break through into something else.
I agree. Math is kind of a construct. Did you know that, before, I have something about, the parasitic thing about language to say, but before that, it's a quick aside. Before, I believe this is real, but before they sent people up into space, they weren't sure if the physics in space were actually going to be the same as here on Earth.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a big guess, hopefully it works the same out there. I think that's so wild.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I was born in the 90s, and I think even the 90s from the thousands ain't too different. And what we're growing up with and used to is happening now, there's a rocket that goes into space once or twice a week, and it's totally normal and almost boring. No one gets excited about it. But it used to be an amazing, fantastic thing that blew everyone's minds. And we kind of just take it at in accord. Yep, that's how that happens. But just I don't know. It's so weird to think. Imagine being born in a time when that wasn't normal, and it just seems so crazy to think not even knowing if what's out there works the same as what's down here. I think it's wild.
it's insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It still blows my mind. Who knows what it's really like to be in space?
Mm-hmm. I'd be terrified.
Some people do.
I don't ever want to go to space. Do you?
Not really.
Yeah, I'm scared.
It'd be cool. It'd be cool.
That's one thing about like the meditating and the selflessness is another reason I quit is like the sensation of not being or being in a void is I don't like it. I think I'm a little bit of a scaredy cat about it, but it terrifies me. Like open water, like floating in the middle of the ocean, that would terrify me. Just the fact that you're in space and like a tin can with absolute vacuum pressing in around you on all sides, like oh my gosh, I don't know if I could handle a submarine either. But dude, for like a year and a half, I sometimes I'll like get like crazy thoughts, and I don't really believe in anything too crazy. Like I said, I'm pretty skeptical, but I'll let myself go along with it. Not like an exercise, I don't know, like maybe active in imagination kind of thing. But I kept having these dreams where and like often, where I was like in a spaceship and I was having to like either go from one ship to the other, or I kept losing it in these dreams and like freaking out and having like pure panic, and like people were like having to subdue me and like get me under control. And I got the inkling that what if really, this is kind of like a red pill thing, but like what if really I'm actually in space, and like it's a lot longer, a lot different than where I actually feel I am as a Donovan here in Washington, America, the Earth. And I just keep freaking out so much I can't handle it. They keep having to like anesthetize me, and either I'm dreaming this or it's like some kind of false reality that's being given to me so I can not freak out. That terrified me. I don't think that's real, but I hope not.
Why do you think you're scared of space?
The void nature of everything. Just so much emptiness. I'm afraid to die. I think everyone is. A lot of people say they aren't, but I think they're lying to themselves. And I think maybe a lot of people really aren't. I think there's a difference between not being afraid of not existing and dying, you know, because I can come to terms with not existing. I'm not really excited about it. For a lot of years, I was really depressed about it. But the actual like experience of dying does not seem very fun. And a lot of people think it'll be fine, but I've been around a lot of people when they're dying. You don't just die in a day. It's usually like 6 months to a year or longer of being out of your mind while your body degenerates, or lots of pain, and it just does not seem enjoyable. And I'm not looking forward to it.
What gives you hope?
Hope? Not much. But I guess just enjoying the mystery and seeing what else people figure out. Like, yeah. I mean, I'm hopeful that I'll make a contribution to the human experience that other people will enjoy, you know. Hopeful to find cool people, teachers, friends. I meet a lot of cool people. It's one of the nice things about being in this town, is meeting so many people from so many different like countries, walks of life, different fields of study. And so, I mean, a lot of people seem to be pretty boring, but every once in a while you'll get someone that seems pretty turned on, really bright and exciting, and or if you can get it out of them. I don't know, like and that's like another thing with language, is that like you have your packets of experience and I have mine, but when you talk to another person, you guys kind of synthesize your thought and kind of bounce off each other, and that's always really exciting. And I think that's probably one of my most favorite experiences, is talking and communicating, and not just like one-way talking, but like an actual cohesive, like kind of, like synthesis of mind. So I'm hopeful to meet great minds. I am hopeful to penetrate as far as I can into figuring out the experience, but I feel like it's kind of unfigure-outable. I used to really deal in absolutes, which I think that came from Christianity. Like, this is it. Something made us. This is where we're going. And I had a huge loss of faith. Have you ever seen the movie Enter the Void?
I don't think I have.
Gaspar Noé. It's a great movie. It's insane. The movie, there's this book, people call it the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it's like a Tibetan manual. They say for like it's actually like a meditation manual, but it kind of maps out what happens to you when you die, and like what the experience is like, and supposedly what the interim of your consciousness finally like gauging from the body and then going through these rounds of strange things until you're reborn again. And the movie is about that. And I saw it when I was 15, and it like sent me into an existential panic because I was like, oh my God, man, I've been thinking so much like heaven, hell, for sure absolutes. And what if that's not right? And then I started like reading into other religions, and I found out there are so many different ideas of why we're here, where we're going, what's after, if there is anything. And I kind of messed with me for like a good, I don't know, 10, 12 years. And now I think I'm starting to come to terms with that. I will likely never know. And I think being able to have wonder, not get stuck in nihilism, and try to be hopeful about just enjoying the experience, even if you won't figure it out, it's a good thing.
What were your thoughts on nihilism? Because you said you gave it up.
Yeah, I didn't give it up by choice, thank God. I kind of had to, like, I don't know, scrape it out of my mind. Because I didn't really choose to have it either.
Well, so what was your thought process with it?
So I had that loss of faith, right? I started investigating other things and then came to the conclusion, which I think it's a good conclusion for everybody to come to, is that you really don't know as much as you think you know. And it's really freeing to a degree, but it put me into a panic. And I like tried out a bunch of different religions. I still like comparative religion, theology, and philosophy, but eventually you're just like reading other people's thoughts, and I stopped believing absolutely anything besides my direct experience. And all that was left seemed to be that I wouldn't know anything and that no one really knows. We have a bunch of, like, science is amazing, like us figuring out this push towards just everything. But I came to the conclusion, and this was like a result of meditating too, is that it's just a big chaotic soup and that there is no point to anything. And I used to love existentialism. I still do, but I got fed up with it, and just getting to the conclusion that you have to make meaning seemed really flaccid to me. And I think that was just like the God trip, feeling like there's no God or creator or heaven or hell or anything like that really messed with me. So I just got into I think there's like positive nihilism, negative nihilism generally has a negative connotation, but I don't know, it's a bummer. It's a bummer if you just wander around life sad and saying, well, nothing matters, so what's the point? And that's what it turned into for me for many years.
But it didn't start out like that?
Well, I mean, it did start out like that. It started out with like light confusion. No, when I first started realizing there was a huge sense of freedom.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, like there's not these moralistic qualms or like these I don't know, these religious things hanging over me. I still think it's good to have morals. I think you have to create your own morals. I think it's funny. Some Mormon people came to my house and they were talking to me, and I was like, got in a conversation with them about my thoughts. And a lot of religious people say this to me, and they're like, well, if you don't believe in God, then what is the point of being good? And that like gives the idea that like, if you didn't believe that there is something looking at you and the threat of eternal damnation, then would you just be like raping, murdering, committing crimes and have like nothing? A lot of people, it seems the only reason they have any sense of morals is because they're afraid of something bad happening to them or God punishing them. But I think a lot of people, especially younger people in this day and age, or I don't know, just like it's been happening for decades. People are learning you have to just be moralistic and have human goodness for the sake of that. It's like a human thing.
What do you think you get out of being good?
Well, on one level, it's just like what you have to do. Like the golden rule is super applicable. Like I don't want any of these bad things to happen to me, so I won't do it to other people. But I think being good and compassionate and kind and helping others is one of the things that actually make you feel the best. Like you can get all sorts of thrills from drugs, alcohol, novel experiences. For a while, I was like a hedonist nihilist, where I was like, the whole purpose of life, if there is no other purpose, is to get the prettiest pictures and the most novel new experiences that I can. That seems to be the only reason. And once I kind of like, I mean, there's way more experiences for me to have, and I still like novelty, but it's not great just sole reason for living. But like in Buddhism, they say there's one of the big concepts of suffering, and they're like everyone suffers. Every single person that is a living, animals, plants, people, and in the sense of like we're all arrived as conscious beings in this world, not knowing why we're here. None of the other people here know why we're here, and we all have to suffer. Like if you're born, you die. We all have like minor sufferings, pain, confusion, etc. We all have major sufferings like war, famine, just like awful things. And the idea is that since we're all here in this game where no one knows the rules and what's going on, and we're all confused anyway, and we're all suffering, the idea should be to eliminate suffering for ourselves and others as much as you can, just for the sake of, I don't know, just to have it be nicer. And I do feel good when I help people. I don't help people as much as I could, but it feels good, Yeah. And you'd also want the world to be a better place. It gets overwhelming sometimes because it seems like things are going way against the course of that, or there's just so many people doing bad things for themselves. But I don't know. It's like almost like a high. It feels good when you like even something small, like complimenting someone, and they like enjoy it. That little like shared thread, it makes everyone feel good.
That's beautiful.
Thanks. What about you?
What do you mean?
I don't know. Being good, compassion.
I think that good equates to growth. I think that growth is where all hope comes from, where everything comes from. Mm-hmm. It's all in growth.
I agree. Constant progression or decay. Have you heard of the anthropic principle? Mm-hmm. I'm probably going to slaughter this one too, but the second law of thermodynamics is entropy. Everything tends towards entropy, dissolution, more complexity.
Yeah, that freaks me out. The entropy idea is the one that gets to me. That everything is slowly cooling down.
Well, there's an idea I like. The anthropic principle is the idea is that though, like on kind of like a material level, that everything tends toward entropy. It seems as though there is some force guiding the universe towards like complexity and cohesion, and like in kind of an intelligent way. So if you don't believe that there was an intelligent designer that crafted everything to make humans and people and all these things kind of come about, that like leaves you with a few options. One is that either it's completely random and chaotic, which I honestly, it used to make me nihilist, but I think it's nihilist, but it sounds weird saying that. But
I've always said nihilist.
Yeah, I've always said nihilist. But if it is completely random, that's pretty crazy still, like that this tiny corner just seemed to cohese and make intelligent things. Like that's just as fascinating, even if it's pointless. But I don't know, the idea that the universe is gaining towards complexity, and like humans are one step in that process. Some people think it's like our brains grow, we become more intelligent. That like developing AI or greater levels of intelligence is part of that process. Yeah. So that's one idea. I do like the idea.
And I think that there's definitely like some aspects of it. It helps. Like some things have to die for growth to keep happening.
Yeah,
growth usually outdoes death. Like there is a cycle, but it seems like the growth side of it overcomes. It's not like a solidly set cycle.
Mm-hmm. There's like some new.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have all this everywhere.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool. I think it's good to have wonder. Sometimes drop into like oh my god, this is all insane, like in a good way, Yeah, growth, constant progression, or else you decay.
And you have to be good for growth. I hate just bad actions. Even if they gave you gain in the short term, they just degrade things around you, which is why it's bad. Exactly. I don't even think it's bad for you to do bad things. It's just bad for everything around you. Mm-hmm. And eventually, when your environment decays, mm-hmm. you decay.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no man's an island. Everything we do is interdependent with everything else around us, And yeah, if you want a better world, better experience for you, especially if you have children,
Yeah.
Like you don't want them to be left with the crap mess you've made,
Yeah.
I think it's good. There's
How-
like, oh, what was I saying?
How do you think college plays into our society and like, being good people, bad people?
I'm not so sure it plays into people being good or bad necessarily. I think it's really cool for people to specialize in something and to. I love studying. I'm not in school, but I spend a lot of my time studying and learning. It's like something that never goes away. It's cool that, that it's an advancement towards something, whatever it is, that you're studying your field. It's very cool, like the cohesion of different minds together. I think a lot of college is a big money game, and like you need a piece of paper to get certain things, which is nice, but I am lacking that paper. I think it's good for experience to grow up a little bit, but I think there is a strange thing that a lot of people, they go straight from high school into college, and college in the academic world is a lot different than the rest of the world. Not saying like, oh, it's not the real world. There's not really any real world, you know what I mean? There's just like different domains of action that people engage in, like some's economics, some's politics, which that is terrible. And I follow politics a lot, but I think it's awful. It's like, I think money's terrible too. But I don't know. I'm not sure about goodness in school. I think for some people it can be. But I think as long as you're choosing to advance your mind, and if you do your best to gain something from it, so that your experience can better, and then you can do better in the world, and that is good. But I think some people, they just kind of do it because it's the path they're set on. I'm not sure, don't know any other way.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm. I like living in this town though. It's one of the most interesting towns I've ever lived in.
This town's cool.
Did you know? Timothy Leary went to school here? Timothy Leary. He was he was a professor of psychology back in the 1960s at Harvard. He went to a few different schools. He was like the godfather of LSD. He's like one of the professors that some scientists were like, hey man, we found this crazy compound. We feel like psychologists will know something about it. And they gave it to him, and he did some experiments with it that people later say like, oh, it's kind of a crappy experiment. But he got so like turned on and realized so many things about it that he kind of became like a quasi. He was kind of out there, but he really did his best to turn on the entire country. At one point, they're like, this is the most dangerous man in America, corrupting our youth. And I only found out like 2 years ago he went to school here. I was reading a biography. And they're like, yeah, Timothy Leary went here. And I like his books. I've read him a lot. He's got a really good book he wrote with this guy named Richard Alpert and Ralph Metzner called The Psychedelic Experience. It's also based in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. But I found out it was crazy. He apparently lived on D Street. Me and my friend tried to go find his old house. We weren't sure which one was his, but also the guy from the Far Side comics went to school here. Do you know those comics?
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy went to school here. Those are like inspired by Pullman. Those are Pullman. Did you know that? It's so crazy.
Not know that.
There's another comic that went to school here. I can't remember his name. Dennis Eichhorn. Yeah, there's been a few interesting people that have come here. I think it's very cool.
Something about the fields.
Yep. When I first came here, I was like, I don't believe in a Christian God, but I was kind of like more like what people like call the universe or something, like kind of like a guiding principle. I feel like God brought me here. I used to use the God word so much for everything, like an adjective, and people not a big fan of that. But I'm not sure if anything brings people anywhere. Things kind of just are, I'm not sure if there's a guiding principle or force that like chooses things to happen, or things are like synchronous, or things are kind of just happening, But it's like part of the narrative thing, the mythologizing, is that you'd like to think that there's a story that you're in and that your part has been chosen,
What do you think anchors you the most?
I think what anchors me the most is, I think my realization that I don't know that much, which is funny in a way.
Yeah.
Because when I would, whether it be philosophy or religion or or morals or anything else because I used to be very absolutist and be like, this is it, this is the way it is. And that's really easy to do, especially if you read like a book on philosophy that goes like from it like chronologically. I don't know if you've ever done that, but when I read in order, I'll be like, wow, this philosopher makes so much sense. I can see it applies to the world. And then you read the next one after that, and you're like, this one makes even more sense. And they all make sense when you're reading them, including religion. And does that like discard the rest of it though? And so when I try to live by absolutes, like this is the way it is, this is the way things are, and I'm going to use that as my map or model for the world. I would either get discouraged and feel like I was fooling myself the whole time, or it would add to the confusion of not knowing. But now, just kind of being secure in my not knowing, it gives me license to be more open with the world and my experience, and not need to, because you can always poke holes in anything if you look close enough. It's like the reductionism thing. So that grounds me a lot, and I think.
But you don't think you can poke holes in math?
I mean, I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can poke holes in anything, but just like as the system that it's set up, that's like what I'm not sure if like as the way our nervous system is, I don't know if like the way we're wired is like mathematical in a sense, so we see math and everything, or if it is something that stands on its own. Because like I've changed my perception with various things, and like your literal picture of the world changes and you see things differently. And I've realized that my nervous system is the world, like that it's my world. And like once it turns off, my world's over, And if I change my nervous system, my world changes.
Well, not necessarily, because your nervous system
it's over for me.
Well, death is such a complicated idea, because you have to figure out what you are first, which is almost impossible.
Talking monkey with a big front brain.
Maybe that is one way you can see it. But I definitely think that all of your body is you. So when your nervous system shuts off, your body is still there, and that's part of the experience. Like the way you experience the world is intertwined with the way that your body is developed and set up. It's like water flowing. When all the water is taken away from the land is still there. But if you really removed,
I guess your conscious experience ends.
Yeah.
Do you believe in a soul?
I think you have to start with the mind. What do you think the mind is?
Well, I think the mind's like differentiated into various aspects. Our ego being one small part of the whole. And I like conscious research a lot, and I spent a lot of time racking my brain. I had to not make myself such an absolutist about it, but I think the mind is totally what it is. Like we have this experience, you and me sitting in a room, but we're actually like our bodies. Our sensory apparatus is like radio antenna we have is sitting in a room, but the experience you and me are having is actually inside of our brain. It's like if you can imagine a little like world recreation inside of the gray matter, that's what we're experiencing. So we're experiencing mind. Like this table is mine, this microphone is mine. It's like a recreation of the actual things that we think are there. There's actually no way to know anything's actually there. We just assume it is, and we work off that because that's what we're given. So I think mind is like what people would call God, or just like the absolute background thing.
We have a lot to work with, though. It's all through the mind. It's all sensory. It's all whenever you have a thought, you're using the same system to experience the world. Mm-hmm. So if you imagine you're in a place, that experience of imagining is the same system that you're seeing all this with.
Mm-hmm. Well, to a degree, I think people say stuff like, imagine if you were a bumblebee, like we don't see ultraviolet light, but some things do. Their world's way different than ours.
But the system, when you imagine yourself as a bumblebee, when you imagine seeing trees, it's the same as looking at a tree, because you're using the same neurons, you're using the same nervous system. It's under the same system. However, we do have organs, stomach, the heart, kidneys,
the meat bag.
The meat bag, and people would consider it part of the mind. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you start to really get into what the soul is, because if you change your meat bag, you were to take away your heart and your stomach and your kidneys, what do you have? If you put that in someone else's body, maybe that changes everything. Maybe if your heart's beating at 50 beats per minute and your stomach is reset up, reconfigured essentially, maybe it changes who you are in a way.
Your person.
And so that's where you start getting it. The way I see it described so often, it's focused on just the brain. And I think that's why it makes it such a complicated picture, because there's way more going into the brain than there's way more going into this experience than just the brain, and who we are than just the brain. And so the brain's almost a transmitter. It's almost like an antenna for everything that you're experiencing, all the organs that you're
the great feedback thing. But if you cut your hand off, your self doesn't change. Your experience does, but you're still the same self, you know?
And that's where you have to go into what can you take away and still be yourself, because you can't take away someone's heart and see if they're still who they are. You can't take away the stomach. There are things you can take away, but there are things you cannot take away.
Yeah.
So you have to start with, okay, there's like a set number of things that a person has to have in order for them to be them, and like recognizably themselves, their souls. And I think the fact that you have that definition, the fact that you can say, okay, if I take away a part, but I still know who you are, implies that there is a soul. Because what are you defining there? What are you, if you're able to consistently say this person has a soul, this person's soul is still there, this person's soul is still there, you're labeling something. Whether you can really describe what it is debatable, but you're sensing something there. You're able to separate it out from as a descriptor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like our like saying like there's not a self, like there's obviously a sense of self, but it's like a process, you know, like everything's in flux and changing. So our self is kind of like it's like a river, you know. But the idea of the soul is something that is separate from you and is stable, that continues on.
That is true.
And I don't I'm not saying there isn't one. I don't know. There's no way for me to know. I'm sure I'll figure out one way or another, but I personally don't. I don't think so.
The side of you that believes in it, do you think that people can lose their souls and still live?
I don't believe in a soul.
You don't?
No. And like something interesting about the idea of self is you know how our minds have two hemispheres? Have you ever heard about, my God, I can't remember what it's called, but it's when they cut the
lobotomy.
Not a lobotomy. There's a membrane of like threads going down the middle of our brain that connects the two hemispheres so that they can speak to each other. And they were doing this thing where I think they call it split brain. And there's people that were having seizures, and they wanted to see if you cut that, I can't remember the name of it is, if it would get rid of seizures. And it turns out it did. And so like I think like a lot of people know, like your right side controls the left side, etc. But something interesting they found with split brain patients is that one side, I can't remember which is which. I think the right side is the one that gets visual information. And I might have these flipped. So like if you see something, your right side says, okay, this is what it is. This is what the feeling is. But your left side is the side that tells the story of what's happening. So something interesting they did to people is they would have split brain patients with like a panel in between separating their two eyes. And they would show two different pictures on each side. So like a duck on the right side and an apple on the left side. And they would say, okay, now draw what image you saw. And so they would like end up drawing the duck. But consciously, they did not recognize they saw a duck. So they would say, oh, I saw an apple. And they'd be like, hey, but you drew a duck. And they would say, no, I didn't. And something they found out, I actually just read an article with scientists saying this proves that there's no self. is that the left side of the brain would find a reason to explain to the person why they drew the other thing. And essentially the left side of the brain makes it up. And they did that like a bunch of different things. And I think that's really interesting. So I think it's pretty much as our sensory apparatus and our environment, but I always find that really interesting.
So what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, I think it means to me that our brain is the one telling the story to ourselves, and that we don't really have any control over it. It's the way it's wired and set up, and obviously the environment, it's kind of symbiotic or like a feedback loop. But that's what it makes me think of, is that my brain is telling me a story, and I have little to do with it.
Do you think that your sides, well, I guess in the study, do your sides have a connection that's strong enough that they're always like, they're pretty synchronized, or are they separate at all times with enough communication to make it a single?
I think so, and I think it depends what state you're in, because we have various parts of our brain, if you're not doing anything, your default mode network kicks in, which is when you start daydreaming or focusing or having thoughts on yourself. And generally, it seems like a negative thing. If you're left to your own devices, you just start harping on yourself or planning about the future, thoughts of self-referential thoughts, and with meditations and certain compounds and stuff, the default mode network quiets down, and there's something that happens. They just found out about this in 2018, I think. It's called criticality. And so there's GABA and glutamate. And GABA is a neurotransmitter that stops the firing, or it inhibits the firing between two neurons. So it kind of slows it down a little bit. And GABA drugs are what they use for people with anxiety, like Xanax or benzodiazepines or barbiturates and stuff like that. And so if you slow down the neurons firing, the idea is it'll get your brain to be a little quieter, but your brain automatically does it. And then glutamate is a neurotransmitter that gets your brain communicating quicker. And on all psychedelics, some inhibit glutamate, like psilocybin. It inhibits glutamate, so certain parts of your brain stop talking to each other as much, which I think is interesting. But with other ones, especially LSD, it's like a kink in the hose, where your glutamate is just getting your whole brain talking to itself. And they have an MRI of people on that substance, and the whole brain is communicating. And that's why there's so many strange experiences, and parts of your brain that normally aren't speaking to each other start yelling at each other and sharing all this information. And your default mode network kind of dies down a little bit. And in that sense, your experience of reality is a lot different than it is. And parts of your brain that never talk to each other are talking to each other. And I don't know. So I just think it's dependent upon your environment, what you're eating, what you're putting in you, what you're thinking. I don't think there's a perfect base state. There's homeostasis, but it changes. It's in flux. And so I think that just shows that, like you said, about language and clay, that reality is just as valuable based upon what your antennae are doing.
Your environment is itself.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, it is. There's a word for it. I can't remember what it is, but we're not really separate from our environment. The body we're in and the environment and the people we're around is a big self. It's a giant process.
Makes sense.
Yep.
See that?
Oh, subject change. We were talking about the parasitic nature of language. There's this writer named William Burroughs, and he had this idea of word virus, and how language is kind of a parasitic entity that spreads over the population and spreads ideas and language. And he kind of went pretty weird with it, which I enjoy. But he had 3 or 4 books that all kind of had the same central theme, and like fiction. And the idea was these hyperdimensional energetic controllers had come into this dimension of thought, and kind of spread this intelligence virus that gave us ideas of money, power, other concepts and like kind of infected us in that way. I think it's interesting. I think language kind of does it on its own. I don't know if there's a controlling entity that is spreading language, but I mean, if you think about God as an intelligent designer, it might not be that different, you know?
So what's the next frontier, man?
The next what?
Next frontier. What have we not explored? Seems to have ground.
I guess it's like artificial intelligence and neurons. I mean, we're still figuring out the brain, you know? We're figuring out quite a bit. One of the things that Timothy Leary, a lot of his stuff was really out there and just like, it's weird. But one idea that he did come up with that I thought was really on point was that in human development, we have like stages of like animal development, tribal development, like industrial development, like technological development, which all those were just starting in the 1960s, and we got pretty far with those. And these had not really started at that point in time, but they have now. And he's like, the next stages of development for humanity is, well, I guess this had started the atomic development, being able to look at things in an atomic level and mess with them, put them together, take them apart, make little things, mess with them. And then past that, there would be the genetic level, when human beings would be able to completely look at our genome and make changes with that. And like, we're there right now. Like, we haven't quite figured out the entire genome, but we're pretty close, which I think is amazing. And like, have you heard of like CRISPR?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, we're doing changes right now. And like, and I think it was so crazy. He thought it was going to be way far off, but it was about 40, 50 years off. And I feel like we're eventually going to get to a peak of that, and that it might become more commonplace. And then also like computers and artificial intelligence, like we're just now, well, not just now, but we're really like the starting gun is going off, and like we're heading on a final stretch, whether it be like 10 years or 50 or 100, we're going to get into some crazy ground of there being like a super intelligence and something. I think it's wild that possibly before we die, there's going to be something that is more intelligent and capable than we can even imagine. It's like making it like a god, you know? But I feel like those are. And then, I don't know, maybe figuring out what black holes are. I've heard a lot of talk about white holes, the opposite of a black hole. There's been a couple of recent theories in physics, and one is that, because like, no one's really sure, like the Big Bang's just a theory, but like we still don't really know what caused it. You know, we kind of get the idea of how it worked, if that is what it is, and how like things spread out. But one idea is that like at the end of time, like, and this is another thing, like some final cohesion point is that like the heat death of the universe, that everything's going to dissolve, but then turn into this fine hot white point, you know, and like all this matter of the entire universe is going to compact. And that'll make a new black hole, and that inside of black holes, it just spawns another universe. So that the idea is that we're like inside of a black hole, and that it just keeps fractaling out. So like in a universe, like there's all these black holes making little own universes, and at the end, it'll just turn into another black hole. And then ideas of whether it'll just go through another cycle, or if it's just going to create something completely new. I don't know. What do you think is the next frontier?
All the ones you mentioned.
Yeah.
For starts, I really believe in biotechnology. I think it's going to change the world in ways that are unpredictable. It's going to be interesting when you're a kid, they always ask you, what superpower would you want? Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, what superpower would you want?
I would probably want, that's a tough one to think, because I wouldn't want any of the like traditional ones, you know what I mean? I'd probably want something like omniscience.
What's that?
Knowing everything. Or like omnipotence, like the ability to be anywhere, do anything simultaneously. Those are the powers I'd like.
With bioengineering, we're going to find out, I believe. Well, and maybe not. Really, it might. I really believe it's going to take a direction that when they found oil for the first time, no one thought this was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
No one conceived, it's going to be the blood of machines.
Yeah, dead dinosaurs. Crazy.
Dead dinosaurs. When we barely scratched the surface. We found CRISPR 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I know, it's so wild.
So
it actually scared me when I first read about it.
The research that they're doing with it is like the people that were first like starting to dig up oil and be like, oh man, like this stuff, like you can burn it, like wow, like you know, the applications are limitless. But
figuring it out.
Who would have thought it would be used for what it was actually used for the most? With CRISPR, we're going to start with like the ability to just have these powers that we've always dreamed of, and we're going to have them. We're going to find out what it means to know everything.
Yeah.
To do who knows what. If you can genetically change any, in a way, it kind of will prove whether there's a soul or not. Because if you can genetically change the building blocks, you can change the building blocks of everything that we are at will.
Yeah.
What do you have?
Yeah, it's crazy. And that's like what Larry was talking about. And that's insane. Like, we can edit our own genome, edit our organism, edit other organisms. It's like wild god power, you know?
It's Minecraft creative mode. It's going to be insane. And like I said, it was probably going to be used for something completely different than even that. But that alone is just it's the next frontier to me.
I agree. Have you heard of transhumanism?
Yeah, we're all supposed to surpass human.
Yeah, just like edit our bodies, do things with our consciousness, put it in a different format. Yeah, things like that are.
But what we're gonna do is define what that actually means, because who knows what it means to not be human.
Yeah.
I'm excited though. I think that all of these improvements I think they're improvements. I think it's growth. Besides that, I agree. AI is obviously going to be big.
I think the genetic stuff is crazier too. Like wetware, genetic programming, DNA programming. Have you ever seen that stuff? Like, I think they use like slug or some kind of slug or leech DNA to like actual do programming. Like, have you seen like the Sierpinski triangle? It's like a triangle that is it like just keeps going further and further into itself. So it looks like a triangle with a bunch of triangles in it with fractals in. They actually program DNA. Like they like use like a written English programming language that like codes it to DNA, and then you actually like did it with DNA, and it's crazy. And like people are using a bunch of like mouse neurons to like program things to do things. Slime molds. They
made mouse neurons play a game.
Yeah, I saw that. It was like Pong.
It's insane. It's so wild.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. It's just gonna be crazy. Like I don't know. I think 50 years the world's gonna be pretty unrecognizable. I think like now in this day and age, like the future that not exactly the same that people used to dream about like decades ago. It's like kind of coming to fruition now. Maybe not fruition, but like I said, like it's starting, you know? Like it seems very futuristic. There's even flying like motorcycles. The cars, the science. It's mind blowing.
It's crazy. Is there any of it that you really look forward to?
I think also like biotechnology I find really interesting, along with like being able to change ourselves. AI kind of terrifies me, the implications, honestly. And like there's like some really disgusting things that it's being used for already. Like on Instagram they have like and like this isn't like far off that I'm looking forward to, but like they have like AI personalities of like the Kardashians, like celebrities, and like and it's like I checked it out, and it's like these like kind of copied versions of those people, and they're like, hey, I'm your sister, talk to me, don't leave me, spend your time with me. And like they all do that, and I think that's really creepy. It's like a really weird way of doing it. So I have some fear about some of the possible uses are going to be used. But I'm looking very forward to, I don't know, seeing like ChatGPT is kind of underwhelming, but it's just very cool what it can be used for. It's semi helpful, and I think like the ability to digest more information and put things together is going to be very cool. I'm kind of terrified of a super intelligence. There's like something called alignment. like we're already having to work on now. Like hopefully we can align whatever happens with this end goal, general artificial intelligence, that it'll be kind to humans and not just look at us like God does to ants or humans do to ants.
Why do you think it would?
Well, there's no way to know what an intelligence will think of us, you know? Like you and me, I mean, some people are very compassionate and consider life sacred, but I don't think most people would think too much of stepping on an ant, you know?
Yeah.
And there's no way to know if that a super intelligence will view us the same way.
It might just accidentally steamroll over us.
Not even accidentally. Just be like, wow, look at this parasitic virus ruining everything. Let's fix that. But I think biotechnology I'm really excited for, and figuring out the brain and consciousness, because that's like consciousness research used to be like really looked down upon, kind of like a pseudoscience almost, but I think it's starting to become more generally accepted, and like, I don't know, I think once you figure out the brain and that genome completely, it'll be very cool, because then we'll have at least what we are.
We're in a moment right now, and I think it might just be a moment, honestly, where we have the internet is still the Wild West. Mm-hmm. All this information is coming out, and so many people are learning so many things that people never thought about before.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's so, like, I spend most of my time studying, and to a degree that I wouldn't be able to if I was not in school or like had a huge library on my own. Like, information, like, there's a lot of garbage too, and like flack that you have to disregard, but it's just so easy to learn, and it's so easy to find resources, whether it be like books, old films. Like, I don't know if you heard archive.org. I'd recommend it.
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, it's been around since like the internet started, and it's like not really pirating, but quasi. It's not pirating, but it's archiving everything.
No way.
Media. Yeah, you can find anything on there, and I get lost in it for hours. But it's also nice for like books and like information. And like Wikipedia is also very awesome, and just for as a starting point to like find a subject, read it, and then find other sources. I think it's wonderful, the ability to learn and search with the internet. Sorry if I cut you off.
No, you're good. I want to check that out.
You should. I'll send it to you.
I don't think it's gonna last though. I think AI is gonna kill it. Like you said, with the fake personalities, we're already seeing people are just using it to write emails.
Mm-hmm. The government, like conservatives, specific ones I can't remember, but they're pushing to have it to take away the anonymity on the internet, and like tech companies are also doing it, like because like which it's kind of to some degrees it might be necessary, because like with AI of generating fake images and stuff like that you cannot tell and pass for reality, that you get an image of something, there's no way to know if it's going to be a real image. So they're like trying to make something that every image or piece of media that you put on has like a pretty much like a stamp or like an ID that goes back to where it was from. And that kind of makes sense, because there's no way to know it's real or not. And I get that, but some Republicans are pushing to take away full anonymity online, so that you can't share information or ideas without the government knowing who you are, which I don't think that's good.
Yeah, there's a lot of laws like that coming out, and you can. It seems like it's getting harder to access information. Mm-hmm. To me.
Yeah, the dark web used to be really looked down upon, and I don't really go on there that often, but I think for most people it's becoming more of a common thing to go on, you know? I think it's kind of confusing for most people, but I mean, anyone can track you on that, but I feel like those kinds of things will start to be more ingrained for people. But yeah, I'm not sure. The internet, sometimes it just disgusts me and revolts me. At least maybe like the effects that it can lead to, and then sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of like technology, you know? Like it just we have such amazing things that we can create out of it, but then we also have very intense developed war machines and weapons and things, you know? There's a flip side to everything.
Well, let's end on some optimism.
Yeah.
Give our listeners some advice, Donovan.
Hope.
Just how to live a good life.
Yeah, I would sit with yourself, and if there's no need to identify with your thoughts or emotions. Like, those aren't you. You don't make your thoughts. Your thoughts and your emotions happen upon you out of nowhere, and that's something that I had to figure out too. And it's hard not to identify, and it's not disassociating for any reason. It's just knowing that they're coming about, and I think it gives you a lot of freedom if you can get some space from your thoughts and sit in yourself and get over that hump and learn to be happy, open, and free, and take life as it is. I don't know, be open, seek, have wonder.
Donovan, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me, Eli.
Have a great day, everyone.